Right. Are you able to see my screen? And does people understand what we are referring to? Yesterday, we started with phase. Today, we say we will look at different life cycle of a project, which project management recommends. The first one is predictive life cycle. It starts with a plan, and finally, all those things which gets executed, you have the product. That is called the predictive life cycle. It is also called the waterfall method and classical system development life cycle, SDLC life cycle, or it is also classical project type. And it is what is recommended in this book that we are going to study, which is our PMBOK book, is a predictive life cycle. So we start with a plan, uh, and then finally, after you go ahead and go through all those plans, you will definitely have the product which is there. The second method, which really talks about the second one is my iterative life cycle. What do you mean by iterative life cycle? Uh, it means here you are very clear on the plan. Here you are very, very clear on the plan. You have a plan in mind. It's given a job to a project manager. He goes through all the pages. You get three. But here, when you talk about iterative life cycle, the level of uncertainty increases. Okay, and when you say iterative life cycle, we it pretty much the same method. You could probably have the same process of you know you could probably follow the same method of following this, but here the level of complexity that will increase. And when you say level of complexity will increase, it means that today I get to a little more complex project where I'm not very sure, or assuming that we get into an implementation of project for the first time, we were not very sure how this will go. It recommends a process life cycle, which is called the iterative life cycle. Basically, it means that you can keep the same step, but what you need to do in between those two things is you need to have a stage which is called a gate review. And when you say gate review, you're talking about you're talking about a situation where probably get this, where you'll go ahead and review. Yeah, there we go. So we are talking about the new life cycle, which is our adaptive life cycle. And when you say iterative life cycle, it probably talks about the same plan, but since we don't have the understanding of the entire product as such, we will roll out in small pieces. And when you say you roll out in small pieces, you will probably release your product in iteration, release in chunks. Okay, small chunks or small pieces or small iterations. And when you say small iteration, you probably, if you have a big product as such, you want to probably break that whole little product. Okay, and yeah, the first one was adaptive life cycle. The second one we are talking about one big product, assuming that we are trying to roll out website or internet website for the first time, we don't know how this will work. I really don't have a complete understanding of what that website will look like. I said, instead of having a full plan for the entire website and go after running that step by step and implementing that project, I probably will only release a piece of this project. Okay, and I will probably, on one phase of the project, I will release this. At the end of this phase, I will have a phase review, or it is also called gate reviews. Gate reviews. When you say gate reviews, as a gate reviews, you take a little feedback from the stakeholders saying that, okay, this is, we wanted to build the whole website, we finish a portion of it. Can you give us a feedback? Are you all good with this? And taking the feedback, then you start moving into the next part of the project where you start. Then you get into the another part of the project where you build another piece, and then you take another feedback, you start building this part also, then you do a phase review again, and then take a feedback again. So that method of rolling out in small pieces, doing a phase review, checking with stakeholder, does it meet the expectation of what you really wanted to? Are you sure this is how you have thought of? Do you give me a feedback? Do you give me UAT clearance? Then we move into the new phase. And so every time we finish a small iteration, we took a gate review, we talk to the stakeholders, we take a feedback, and then move forward. This method of rolling out in small chunks, iteration, doing a gate review, okay, is called the iterative life cycle. Iterative life cycle is. Okay. Any questions so far? Why do we do this? This is generally done for projects which are a little complex in nature. We really don't know what do we want. Sometimes we have a little understanding, but not the complete understanding. So we probably have a method in mind. We said, okay, you don't have to have a plan for the entire project. You can take a small piece of it, develop it, take a feedback, and move forward. That is what iterative lifecycle does. Good so far? Questions so far? Because then I'm going to move to the third life cycle, which is the adaptive life cycle. And we will talk about that in some time. And what does it mean is life cycle. Here, the level of uncertainty increases to the maximum. And we have very less time, which means we probably have to do the testing and development meant at the same time, and the time frame here can reduce between 1 to 4 weeks of time. When you talk about the iterative life cycle, we are talking about a life cycle which is but here the time limit is confined to 6 months of period. And so we're talking about predictive life cycle, we're talking about iterative life cycle, we are talking about adaptive life cycle. And when you know that level of uncertainty is so complex, you have only one between the less to 1 to 4 weeks of going ahead and getting this project driven, which means you have less time. Probably everything has to be done at the same time, which means testing and development is also done at the same time. Here also, you are rolling out your projects in iterations, small chunks. You are not very sure of how this project will go, and that is what adaptive life cycle is all about. Okay, and let me also walk you through a little bit of slides there, and then you tell me whether you have a clear understanding of how project life cycles means and how projects can be driven. So Yesterday, we did speak about phases. We say there are three kind of phases. One is sequential phases, one is overlapping phases, one is parallel relationship between different phases. Today we are speaking about three life cycle. One is the predictive life cycle, which is a classic project management that we are talking about today. Second one, we are talking about an iterative life cycle, which means you will have 6 months of time, the level of complexity increases, isn't it? This is predictive life cycle. It is also called the waterfall method. It is a classic project management style. You have a plan in mind. There is no, it all depends. You're pretty much clear on your plan and you go about that plan. On the other one, we say iterative life cycle. We say we rule this out. The stages don't change much, but every time we do an iterative cycle, the time limit reduces to 6 months, complexity increases. There is a small review and feedback which happens, and that are called generally gate reviews. You take the feedback, you move into a new iteration. The third one is generally called the adaptive life cycle because your time limit is so confined to 1 month of time. You need to probably do the testing, the planning, the development, the integration. Everything is happening at the same time. And not only that, you are probably also planning for the next release already. Within that 1 month of period, you're probably doing your testing, development, planning, also the thought process of how do you want to go about the next release. You're already doing this. Now when you have this kind of life cycle, you need to move very very fast, and you need to have very skilled people. But the fact is it's highly uncertain. It needs to be very fast. We do this when we are not very very clear. We do this in small pieces, small iterations, and that's how we release this project. So these are the three life cycle that project management recommends. When you talk about this three project life cycle, predictive is very plan driven. Okay, and you have a plan in mind, you drive that. Iterative is okay, you build a piece of it, you increment. Adaptive is so change driven because it's highly complex. We don't know how the product extensively. It needs to deliver. It needs to be generally delivered within 2 to 4 weeks of time. uh, it's complex. We are doing probably testing and development at the same time, and we're also moving forward with that. These are the three life cycle that we have as a part of my project man. These are the only three life cycle which is recommended as a part of the book, and which are predictive, iterative, and adaptive life cycle. Questions? Anyone?
Yeah, hi, Sachin here.
Yes, Sachin. What is the question?
As per the interview point of view,
Hmm.
which life cycle is good?
Yeah, see, I'll tell you what, it all depends on what project you are implementing. Yesterday, Rajesh spoke about something that adaptive life cycle. I just have to mention that also. Adaptive life cycle level of, it is also called the agile way of project management. Okay, and I will explain that by taking a reference of Scrum. I will take you guys through the entire Scrum module right after this. Okay, uh, which and this is a fair question, Sachin. From an interview perspective, the question will come to you, assuming that you are applying for an internal IGP within the company. He says, Sachin, great. You know that there is a classic project management style, which is the PMBOK style of project management. Wonderful. There is an iterative life cycle. There is an adaptive life cycle, which is also called the agile project management. Which one do you go? It all depends on the project. Okay, if you're very clear on the plan, if you have a lot of time in mind, you will definitely go with a classic project management style, which is your predictive life cycle. If you don't have a lot of time, it is very complex, you will expect a lot of changes that needs to be driven because you are not sure of the plan. Assuming that you are building a house, you don't know how your house will look like, and then you have less time to do it. You probably start building and realize, oh my god, the window should not be like this, let's change it. Okay, well, I think the kitchen should not be like, let's change it. Okay. And then in a situation like this where you're really building something, for example, you are releasing a software, and you are releasing a software which you are not very, very sure how this software will look like. But you start building in small pieces and say, okay, fine, this is okay, this is nice. Okay, good. Let's start building it, take a feedback, move forward. So when you have a complex, change-driven project, we are not sure of the scope. You don't know how it will go by. It needs to move very very fast. You have a limitation of time because specifically this is predominant in software industry because they have releases coming every 2 months, isn't it, Sachin? So when you talk about a software release, they almost have a release every 2 months. Now when you have a release which is every 2 months, how can I go through the whole process of writing? Because the first one is very heavy on documentation. You need to have a plan. You have a lot of time. You will go ahead and plan it out, your entire tangent on how your project will be conceptualized, and you move forward. So when you have a plan in mind, when you're very clear of what you want, you can build that as a part of the plan. You start running behind that, very good. But if you have less time, it's complex, you don't have time, you probably want to do things much faster, then you probably get into adaptive life cycle, which is the agile project management. That is why you see agile is very very much dominant in IT industry, specifically software releases. But if you look at a classic project of a construction project, you don't see that much out there because in a classic project management, you will see that okay, when you have to build a building, or how does it look like because you already have an architectural design, you know what materials you will use, how much time it will take, what are the resources, how much money. You are very clear on how do you like, and only when the plan gets approved, you want to take that plan and go around meeting that. Now, difference between this one and that one, you don't expect a lot of changes because it's a plan. Although you do have a provisioning of change management there, but you don't expect a lot of changes there. Here, you are not very sure of how do you want to go about this. Now, it all depends again, boils down to what project you want. If your scope is unclear, if you have less time, uh, then probably you will go with adaptive life cycle, the agile project management style. If you're very clear in your scope, you have a great plan, and you have time, you probably will go for a predictive life cycle. Are we okay, Sachin?
Okay.
Right?
Okay, Rajesh.
Yeah, very good. So we have three life cycle, and I just want to see if I have missed out anything important from that you guys should know from a book perspective. Yesterday we did go through the different organization type. There are two or three more words that we will are very critical to all projects. You want to exactly understand the meaning of it, and I will take you to the first word, which we will get soon now. And many times you hear a word called stakeholders. What does a stakeholder mean? What do you mean by a stakeholder? Anyone? You keep hearing this word called stakeholders all the time. What do you mean by a stakeholder? Who is this stakeholder that we are talking about? Understand when you get this PMBOK, it has reference of everything, isn't it? It needs to really define everything. It needs to define the phases. What do you expect from a project manager? What is a life cycle? What are the different kind of ways projects can be driven? Who is stakeholder? What is the meaning of project? What is the meaning of program? It defines everything. So for stakeholder also, it is a very specific definition. It explains that very, very clearly. So can somebody, try to tell me what do you mean by stakeholder? Anyone?
Yeah,
What's
it could be
Hmm.
varies on the context. Like if you think from end user, it could be they could be our stakeholders, and if we think of the other users like senior management team and all, and
Correct.
also management team. So it depends. Like depends on the context.
Very true, Rajesh. Thank you for chipping in. And you are right, Rajesh. It could be anybody, but let's look at the definition of what a stakeholder according to the book. The book says any individual, or can be a group, or can be an organization who may affect or may be affected by or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity, or an outcome of a project is a stakeholder. What do you mean by that? It can be an internal project stakeholder, it can be an external stakeholder, it can be a guy who likes the project, it can be a guy who doesn't like the project, a guy who performs the project, a guy doesn't perform the project, it can be an occasional project or a full-time project. Now, this is in theory. Okay. For example, if you have an airport coming along, okay, and let's say one of our friend is in Ratnagiri, and you have an airport coming in Ratnagiri. Now, while she is not somebody who is a very important stakeholder in that area, but in generally she will be affected by that airport. Not that somebody is going to talk to her constantly on about the project plan, and we're not going to really know how many flights will go, how many flights will come, and all those things. But since she stays in that area, positively or negatively, she will be affected. So when you look about the definition of stakeholder, it probably means the whole world can be there, because you are talking about somebody who can be affected, or may affect by that project outcome, is considered to be a stakeholder. Example, we defined this a little more with the help of an onion model. We say, who are the stakeholders? To start with, your project team is a part of the stakeholder community. When you say project team, you are also talking about the project manager who is there. And then you have the most important guy of the project, which is called the sponsor. Okay. Then you have you're driving this project within the organization, so anybody within the organization is also a stakeholder. For example, your PMO is a stakeholder, your functional managers, your operation, your senior managers, your portfolio managers, all of them are also considered a stakeholder. You go beyond your organization, an external organization, for example, government bodies. Okay, today you are trying to, we took that reference of airport project. If you don't have an environmental clearance, that project can go for a hold. But they are not, you're not going to talk to them regularly, but at some point of time you do want this clearance to be there. Okay, and so they also become a part of the stakeholder community. The customers, of course, will be a part of it because you're doing it for them. The community, the consultants, the vendors, the suppliers, the regulatory bodies, all of them in general will come under the definition of stakeholders. So anybody who may affect or may be affected by the outcome of the project deliverable is considered a stakeholder. All of them will be a part of the stakeholder community. So tomorrow when you start talking about the project reference and you're talking about stakeholders, everybody will fit into the project. Now, just a word of caution, you realize that when you start working as a project manager, you're dealing with a lot of projects and you start keep talking about those stakeholders, most times you are talking about the most important, the critical stakeholders, and we will talk about that much later. But the definition of PMP, okay, everybody will fit into the understanding of what a stakeholder is. Clear? Any questions? Okay, now I'm coming to a guy who is very, very important on this, is the project sponsor. Who is this guy? What do you mean by project sponsor? What does he do? Who is this guy who is also, you will always hear, one, we spoke about stakeholders, you'll always hear about this guy. Second, we always will have a project sponsor, always, okay? Because without a sponsor, the project cannot go. I'll give you an example, and then we will talk about this guy whom we will take more reference on. Okay. Okay. Now, for example, our friend Rajesh is working for Capgemini. Okay. Probably put it CG. And then they're trying to deploy a solution in a bank. Okay. And assuming that they are probably want to go ahead and deploy a solution in the bank, and let's say HSBC. We take an example of a bank. Now I understand HSBC has a requirement of a software. Okay, let's say they want to go ahead and deploy a core banking software. That is a requirement. Okay, they probably do have a core banking software which is there right now. Core banking is generally the main software that you have in the bank. It is basically tracks the all financial records of a customer. So all your records are generally a part of the core banking software. Assuming HSBC banking is going through an upgrade or a change of their core banking software. They spoke to many vendors. Finally, they also say, I need somebody who can do this. Capgemini wins the the bid, and they apply for the project, and they get they get as a vendor who gets selected for the deployment of the project. Now we are talking about core banking deployment project, which is done by the guy called HSBC. Now understand, now while there are many departments which will be there in the bank, for example, we've been taking about we have been talking about so many references which are there. Okay, we are talking about the operation functional team which will be there. We are talking about the finance team. We are talking about the HR team. We are talking about the legal team. We are talking about the small medium enterprise team. We are talking about uh, procurement team. Okay. Finally, we realize that this project of core banking software deployment, which we are trying to get, and we are trying to get it from this guy, needs to be done by somebody. Somebody needs to become the real top owner of the project. It's his baby. It's his brainchild. It's his idea that I need to go ahead and upgrade the current software in the project. So eventually you realize it is definitely something that will be customer facing, because operations generally deal with customers. So in general, you see that this guy here, our operations guy, are generally dealing with all the people in the world, and operation head in general, okay, in an example like this, okay, the operation head will become the sponsor of the project, because HSBC, okay, like what I said, needs to drive a lot of projects for the strategic goal. One reason why it needs to go ahead and drive this project, because they want to upgrade this. Now somebody needs to be the top owner of the project. Okay, and we realize in this case it's a core banking software. It's the finance. It is something that is customer facing. Somebody needs to become a real owner of that project from the organization, and that guy in general, this HR head in general, okay, is called the sponsor. Okay, so he represents the project. He is the top guy. Okay, we are talking about a guy who is a project. So you could have representation from here. You could also have some people who will come, technical team who can come from here. You are probably talking to many other people in Capgemini, but within the company there has to be one guy who needs to be the real owner of the project. That guy is called sponsor. Here it's an example where operation guy can be there, be a GM, it could be a CEO, it could be anybody in the top who will be the real owner, because you will also have the information security team, you will also have the audit team. There are many other departments which are there. Okay, anybody who becomes the real owner of the project, because eventually if this software deployment project goes wrong, it is this responsibility of this guy. Even before the project manager comes into the picture, it is his responsibility to make sure the project is successful. Did we get this definition correct? And this is an important definition as per the book is concerned. And this guy is called the sponsor. Okay, and there are a few things that he will do, because he represents. He's the top guy in the organization. His job is to ensure that the project is aligned to the organization goal. Okay, because like what I said, we do this because of strategy, isn't it? We do this because all the operations, all the projects, all the program, all these are linked to, and everything that we do under the umbrella of the organization, okay, which in nutshell is called portfolio. Everything is a part of the strategy. Projects are also different, driven as a part of the strategy, because we have a link to my strategic goal, the organization goal, which is where we are saying it's a mission, or vision, or what you really want to do as a company, what you really want to achieve. And to achieve that, we decided that because we want to grow ahead and we want to be the best in the world, we said, okay, because of this, we want to develop, we want to upgrade our core banking solution. And this needs to be really aligned, because then only we said our mission is to have be the best in the market. Okay, we want to be the best in the banking market, or the lead. We want to be the best in the marketing rate. So who takes this responsibility? Because my strategy cannot succeed if any of this fail. Everything has to be successful. So all the projects needs to be successful, all the programs needs to be successful, all the portfolio, whatever comes into the umbrella, needs to be successful. And somebody within that organization needs to take the responsibility. Okay, when I get this software solution that I'm looking, it will give better service to the customer. People will be extremely happy, they will be really satisfied with the delivery that we do. It is faster, it is transaction, it gives their other benefits, there are emails, there are SMS, all those functionality will be there, and it can help me get the best in the market. So this becomes the real responsibility of a guy called sponsor. He is the guy who ensures that if the project is successful, project needs to be successful, because if this is not successful, we'll not be the best in the market, we'll not meet our mission and vision. So he ensures that it takes care of project is aligned to the organization goal. He also facilitate problem solving. Today we know that at some point of time, this is the guy, okay, this is the guy who becomes eventually responsible for it. But of course, he's a top guy, he's a busy guy, he's an operation head, he's a GM, he's a CEO. He himself will not go and drive the project, he will have to find the project manager. That guy nominates the project manager. So for him to go ahead and ensure that project is successful, or finding project successful, he needs to find the right project manager. That's okay. But if the project manager gets stuck and he gets into some level of conflict, where does he go to? He goes to this guy called sponsor. So he is the guy who's responsible for problem solving. He is the guy who is responsible for arranging funds. He is the guy who is responsible for arranging resources. He is the guy who is responsible to get commitment from all stakeholders, key stakeholders. He is the guy who selects the project manager. He is the guy, without his signature, the project cannot go live. He is the guy who signs on the charter, and we'll talk about that in a while. But yeah, okay. So for me, the topmost guy of a project, the most important, the ultimate stakeholder, is the sponsor. Questions. So by this time we understood three things. One, we know different life cycles which are there. Second, we understood who is a sponsor, what does he really do, and we also understood the definition of what a stakeholder means. Are we good so far?
Yes, Raj, but I have one doubt.
Yeah.
His sponsor is a part of the PMO team.
Yeah, like what I said, Sachin, he can be part of any team, but generally, like say, organization needs to have a top representative of the project, the ultimate owner of the project. Okay, tomorrow,
Okay.
so you could be anybody. If I'm driving one of those legal project, example, okay, you remember in India very recently there are many Chinese apps which are banned, isn't it? Now, now probably if you want to ensure, that becomes like a small project for somebody on the legal, or probably in the information security. He says his job of the project is ensuring the softwares that you have from the China needs to be banned. Okay. Now, who can be now? Somebody needs to drive this from the organization. Somebody needs to be the top guy who's responsible for the success of the project. Somebody knows that it's a key project. It's important. I need to get commitment from the stakeholder. I need to arrange a project manager. I probably need to arrange money, but I need to drive this small initiative that we've taken. That will ban all this. We'll ensure that nothing is remaining. Everything is blocked. Everything is blocked from the Google. From the Android, from the Apple platforms. It's all blocked. Now somebody needs to be driving this from the organization. I would say, okay, maybe the information security head is the right guy because he understands security more, and probably that becomes a top guy. Now, does he do it himself? No, he does not do it himself. He will find a project manager who can do it for him, but he becomes an ultimate responsible for the project. Okay. uh, to explain this a little more further, and we will cover this in a little more detail later. But to explain this, when you define your project, the first thing that you talk about, okay, and when you get nominated as a project manager, the first thing that you get is to define your project steering committee members and the project team. That's probably the first thing that you are happening once the charter is signed. And before the charter is signed, you really need to identify that key stakeholders. When you say project steering committee members, you're talking about the key stakeholders. Holders needs to be identified. According to the definition of stakeholder, the whole world fits into it, isn't it? But in my case, when I'm probably driving, let's say, a project which can help me to introduce security solution, which can ban all the Chinese app, I'm probably looking at the people who can be part of my steering committee. I can probably look at a guy who can be part of the information security office, who can be part of the legal office. We can be part of the IT team, who can be part of the audit team, okay, who all can be part of the operation team. You probably will identify one key person from all this department, and that department will be a part of this. Now, one of this guy also will be responsible for being the top for the outcome of the project. Okay, assuming that ISO head, we've just nominated this guy, saying that I think it's falling in your domain. I think you better take the ownership of this guy. The ISO head is generally the sponsor of the project. He will go ahead and do it. Now, when I actually get the project live, I will have to have a regular meeting that happens, and that is called the IT project steering committee meeting. Okay, there is a word called project steering committee. Who is a part of this meeting? In general, anybody that you've identified as a part of the project steering committee members are generally met. You define a frequency and you meet these guys. Most likely every month you need to meet the steering committee member, and there is one guy within those key people that you identified. You will start talking to them, and those guys takes a call on project steering committee meeting, that what is good, is the project going on track, is it not going on track. So all depends on this guy. But yes, within that key stakeholder, there's one guy who will own that project eventually. He's the ultimate owner of the project. He's also responsible, like the way, for many other things, including selecting a project manager. So it could be anybody, but yes, it all depends on that. And then you will also have a team who can be part of it, because you can have a developer, you can have a tester, you have the information security analyst, you can have the business analyst, you could have many other people that you can be a part of this, the developer and database guy and whatever it is, all be a part of it. But they get identified and they get really taken care of it.
And
Yeah.
he is responsible for a single project or multiple projects.
Yeah, he can be because, yeah, I like what I tell you. Like I told you, this is an information security head. Okay, his main job is ensuring that the security in the security within the company is his prime responsibility. So there are a lot of work that he must be doing, functional and operation work. Okay, so he continues to do it. He manages the team, he
Okay.
takes care of security, he does everything. But at the same time, one extra responsibility that he takes is that, okay, it looks like to be a security project, and I think you need to be a sponsor of this. So he becomes a sponsor of security project. Okay. So he does all his regular work, plus becomes a sponsor, because if this project fails, then it is definitely the project manager has failed, that's fine, but ultimately this guy has failed. So he is there all this while, arranging people, arranging fun, arranging money. If something goes wrong, he wants to ensure that project manager is doing this job correctly. We are not getting into some bottlenecks. So eventually he becomes the real owner, because we took an example of this. When you say HSBC, who in HSBC will become the real owner of the project? Is the sponsor. Who is its sponsor? Depends on the project, but it needs to be a guy who is really powerful and they're in a top position. And you'll always have those GMs and CEOs and head of the functional department really being a part of the sponsor. So most times within the organization, all the top guys will be handling one of the projects. The legal guy generally becomes the sponsor of the legal projects. The technology head, IT head, okay, assuming that you are probably try to roll out, let's say, AWS cloud solutions into the system, most likely, but the guy who understands this quite nicely is the IT head. IT head may become the sponsor of this project. But why are we doing this? Because organization should reach this goal that we have thought of. Okay, so sponsor is the ultimate owner. He does not drive it because he has a lot of work. He needs to do a lot of things. But every time you have a steering committee meeting, this guy is there. This guy is reviewing along with the key stakeholders that you have identified. They will review the status of the project. They'll give their feedback. They'll represent everybody else in the world to ensure that we are getting the right kind of inputs and you are taking it forward as a project manager. So this guy, for a project manager, is the ultimate guy. And from a class perspective, we should understand who is this sponsor, what does he really do, and what can be taken forward with that. So
Okay, Raj.
okay, right. So we understood now what is a sponsor, and we also looked at a different kind of life cycle.
Rajkumar, one question.
Yes,
So in
Rajesh.
Agile, product owner is a project sponsor.
Yeah. Sponsor does not change the definition. Okay. The definition of sponsor doesn't change. Okay. Assuming, okay, this definition of sponsor will remain same for even agile project. Okay. Here's the top guy. Assuming that we are driving one of those hotfix release. Okay, we are driving one of the hotfix release today. You do have let's say uh, a service management software. Everybody has a service management software. You log your incident, problem, changes, and everything else. So there's a hotfix which release. We said no, we don't have to go through the whole long process. It needs to be driven very very fast. It can follow a method of agile. The definition of sponsor doesn't change, but there are three key people that we will talk about in agile. Okay, and like what Rajesh said, we don't have a project manager in the agile. It is called the Scrum Master, and if it's not one of those Scrum project, then it can be in the agile coach. You do have the product owner, and you will have a team which will be a mix of quality analysts who will do testings and the developers. Okay, but the definition of sponsor doesn't change. Somebody really needs to own the service management hotfix release, which should probably happen in 4 weeks of time. You have to run a sprint. We'll talk about that in a while, but it does not change. This guy still becomes an eventual responsible for releasing this. There are three rules that we will talk about it, but this guy still becomes a key. Sponsor does not change. He remains the guy who can be one of this guy. Probably looks to be a service management guy. I think it's more aligned to the IT team. Maybe the IT guy can be sponsor. He becomes responsible for all this. There are other things that we will be talking about what these guys do, but yeah, this guy still remains the same, the real owner. But on ground, he does not do much work. There are people who will do with him because the project team is there. They will do a lot of work. Here also you have a team, you have a scrum, they will do a lot of work there. Okay, but in general, yeah, sponsor definition, irrespective of what the project life cycle that you're following, whether it's predictive life cycle, whether it's iterative life cycle, or the adaptive life cycle, the definition of sponsor remains the same. He is the real owner of the project. He does take care of it. All these are his responsibility. Sometimes you need money for the project, he is the guy who will arrange. You need to find the best developer and tester, and you need to ensure that the right kind of resources are arranged. This is the guy who becomes responsible for ensuring that you have the people to work with. You can select the best guy, that's fine. You can take the interview as a project manager or a scrum master or product owner. You can do an interview, but eventually outcome or eventual responsibility of arranging people is this guy responsible. Okay.
Okay, Raj. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about agile. Like what I said, I'll take a reference of a project, scrum project, and we will start with values. We'll talk about principles, and we took a reference of scrum project. We will explain that. Okay, so we said we really went into project life phase. We looked at yeah, this is something yeah, we need to understand that project life cycle is purely based, like the way it depends on the time that we have, complexities that we have. And we understand that when you are driving a project, your risk is very high at the beginning of the project, because you're not very sure of what can happen in the project. But as in when you progress on the project much later, the risk will reduce, because now you're very clear on how the project will do. Secondly, the cost of changes, it really increases at the end of the project. In the beginning, if you make some changes, it's okay, because you've not done a lot in the project. If you have to spend a little money and make those quick rectification, it's fine. But once you say that you spend some 2 months on the project and you realize something is not right and it is not correct and you have to make the changes, all the effort that you have given from beginning till the end goes in waste. So we want to ensure that we change that and we come back to that. uh, the money spent for a change much later will be very higher. We did speak about phase and review. We spoke about that specifically, and you know uh, specifically in iterative life cycle, we'd release a small piece of the software or the project deliverables. We take a feedback, we then move to the next. So in general, there are gate reviews, there are milestone reviews that we do. We take a feedback, and that is generally called a phase and review. We look at the phases yesterday, whether it's serial relationship, whether it's overlapping or a parallel relationship. We looked at life cycle today. We looked at predictive life cycle, iterative life cycle, adaptive life cycle. So we kind of understand now, okay, almost from an introduction perspective. And I'll probably go to one more thing, and you will get to know a lot of things, right? With regards to introduction, we are almost getting there, which is our process group knowledge areas and processes, because the entire methodology. And let me just quickly open up that handbook that we are talking about. Okay. This book only had predictive life cycle information here, but yes, like what I said, it also now entails the information on agile life cycle as well. But when you talk about project life cycle, it really talks about three important things that we will be talking about. One is the process groups. Okay. One is the knowledge areas, and one is the process. The entire methodology of predictive life cycle, the classic project management, is based on these three things. The entire book is based on this classic project management style, is based on these three things. Now, what are those three things? Why do we get the project started? Okay, we get the project started because we have an objective in mind, isn't it? There's a goal in mind. We say, today we spoke about data science project, we spoke about switch upgrade project, we spoke about big data project, we spoke about one of those cybersecurity solution project. Okay, why do we do that? Because we have a goal in mind, we have an objective in mind. That's why we do a project. Can I replace this word with what? Okay, when you have an understanding of what needs to be done, that's how the thought, or probably we could also mention the idea phase. In general, it starts with a question called what. So once you have what do we need to do, what is the thing that we needs to be delivered, the idea, the goal, objective, that's how the project gets started. Once you have an answer to what, you probably will say, how do we do it? Isn't it? When you say, when you know what you need to be done, you really want to know how it needs to be done. We are talking about something which needs to be done. So we're talking about a plan that needs to be followed. And once you have the plan, then you do it because you know what you wanted to do. You have a plan around that. Then when you have a plan around that, you execute the project, you do the project. And at some point of time, you want to ensure that the project is been delivered correctly. You want to know it's been done correctly. So you want to know whether it's done correctly. And if you have an understanding of whether it's done correctly, after that, you complete the project. The same questions I'll probably replace with the project management word. Okay, when you have a thought and an idea, which means why don't you're doing a feasibility check, you really wanted to know, you are getting into the charter phase, so you want to go ahead and initiate the project. Once you have an initiation in place, one goal and objective, you want to know how it is done, so you want to ensure that there is a planning which is done. Okay, so you have an idea, you have a plan, so you get started, which means you go ahead and do an execution of the project. And when you talk about execution, then it also means that you can probably go forward and ensure, at regular intervals, you want to ensure that we are doing it correctly. So you want to know monitoring and controlling. Okay, so you started with a thought, you had a plan, you started working towards that plan. In regular intervals, you're also checking whether the project is done correctly or not correctly. And once you know it's all done correctly, you'll probably complete the project, which means you'll close the project, right? This 5 keywords are process group. Okay, This whole 5 words in life cycle is called process group. And in our terminology, you generally start with a life cycle. You initiate the project, but sometime you will go ahead and planning can take a lot of time, execution can take a lot of time, monitoring and controlling can happen throughout the project because it's an endless process, but then closing can really happen. So this 5 phases in general is called the process group. Okay, so we have an understanding of what this process group is. What are these knowledge areas? The book really talks about knowledge areas, because now then you have an understanding of what the project needs to go through. You will have to go ahead and initiate the project, plan, execute, monitor, control, close it. But it cannot really happen because we spoke about the reference many projects that we looked at. And let's assume that you want to do a core banking solution. Only by understanding initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, can you get the project? Probably no. I need to have an understanding of many things, because as a project manager, I need to have an understanding of expert areas. Those key important things that you have in the project needs to be known quite nicely to you. Then only the project can be successful. And one example of something that you should be knowing very well, if you need to go ahead and drive this project, you need to ensure that you have an understanding of scope of the project. Otherwise, it cannot be done well, isn't it? If you don't understand how much work is there, you are trying to deploy this project, you're trying to deploy this core banking software, you need to understand how much work is there. If you don't have an understanding of this, your project is not complete. Okay, you need to have an understanding of how much time will I take to go ahead and take it. So you need to have an understanding of schedule of the project. So you need to have an understanding of scope, you need to have an understanding of schedule, you need to have an understanding of cost, how much money, because I want to do this, I need to know how much time I will take, how much money I will need, how much work is there. What else will be the important aspects for the project? Can somebody recommend some more things which should be a part of this? For a project to successful, you know the life cycle, you know the process group. We now are talking about those expert areas. We're talking about this expert areas, and actually we're talking about the knowledge areas. We're talking about the knowledge areas. So we said, okay, scope is very, very important, schedule is very, very important, cost understanding is important. What else understanding will be important? Anyone wants to give it a try? Of something else which should be there in the list? There are many. Actually, there are 10. I've got only 3. There are many other things that we need to be expert of. We need to have an understanding of all this, because only when I understand this and then go through the whole process group, then only I will get the project outcome. So we have a scope, we have a schedule, we have a cost. What else can be there? Anybody's giving it a try? Anyone?
Resourcing.
Resourcing. Very good. So resource. You want to give it another try, Rajesh? Of course, the project is all about quality. So we are really bothered about the quality of the project. And this is an expert area. We need to do a lot of work around this. There's a managing resources, just a lot of work. We need to do a lot of estimation on cost. We also need to do a lot of communication, because constantly we need to talk about different things in the project. We also need to do about risk. Okay, there are many times we will need vendors and RFPs and bids and all those things. We need to do procurements. How many did we have? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What else will be there? We are missing 2. What will be there? Anyone wants to give it a try? We talked about scope, we talk about schedule, we talk about cost, we talk about resource, we talk about quality, we talk about communication, we talk about risk, we talk about procurement.
Anything related to maintenance?
Yeah, maintenance and all will fit into procurement because somebody needs to manage that contract. So procurement will take care of it. What else? There is one process which really needs to take care of all this, which is integration project, because integration process generally talk to all these processes, all these knowledge areas, and then there are 50 other processes. Okay, because within this purview you will have 50 processes. What is a process? Today let me take you an example of your leave. Okay, okay, your leave can be, maybe you send an email to your boss, and then you get an approval from your boss. Then you probably apply an ERP, and it gets the you can acknowledge, and then you can proceed on leave, or probably you do a handover, and then you can proceed on leave. This is a process where you have step by step, one by one, in general, which talks about you know uh, uh, basically a graphical representation of the requirement is called a process. In general project management methodology also, you have inputs, you have tools and technique, and you will have outputs. Here also there are many things which came as an input: the email, the approval. You used ERP as a tool to go on leave, and finally you also went on a leave because then you proceeded. That is the output. All this as a part of a process, one process. We just took an example of an leave application process. In PMP also, all those knowledge areas that you see here, okay, and all those process group needs to have processes which are there. One example of a project is develop project charter. Okay, it is a part of the initiation process group, because once you have the project getting selected, the first thing that happens is you need to develop a project charter. Now this developing project charter needs to have inputs, needs to have tools and technique, and it needs to have outputs. Okay, we'll talk about this in a while, but the basis of entire project management is about this process group, these knowledge areas, and there are 50 other processes which will be here. 50 processes we are talking about. Develop project charter is an example of one of the process. Okay, there are many other processes that we are talking about. Include, when you have an understanding of this process group, these knowledge areas, and the life cycle, you probably get your outcome. let's go to the book, and the entire book is based on that. I wanted to show you that when you go to page number, yesterday when we were going there, we realized that this table, which should be available on your page number 62, the entire project management is about this mapping of process group and knowledge areas and you know uh, uh, and the processes. So on the top you have the process groups, then you have the knowledge areas, and then you have all these processes. And I took an example of develop project charter. We'll talk about that in a while. Just don't get really, don't look at something which is very complex or uh, it's very confusing. But for now, if you have an understanding of all these knowledge areas, you have an understanding of process group, and you know all these processes, you'll be able to take care of the project. This is what the PMBOK expects you to. And just to give you a heads up, we will talk about each and every process. The 50 processes that you see here, we'll all talk about this, because today integration is, like the way I said, it's about achieving everything together. Something needs to mix this together, and that is what integration knowledge area is all about. Okay, so do people have an initial understanding of what is process group, what is a knowledge area, and what are the processes? We don't have to know this in detail for now. We will go through them one by one. But for now, do people know what does it look like? What does it mean? What is the understanding of that?
Rajkumar,
Yes.
clarification.
Yeah.
Uh, so as the syllabus is going on, we are hearing a lot of new words, a number of terms and all. Like, how do we remember all these terms?
Yeah, but Rajesh, it's a good question, and that is why sometimes PMP, when people get into PMP training, they feel it's very, very heavy on vocabulary. Okay, how do we remember this? One, of course, you are going through the training. This is the first or third day of the session. Just we are getting used to it. We will repeat those words many, many times. So by the end of the curriculum, you will understand this. That's one. Specifically those key words that we use, it will be all remembered with the help of some level of documentation and templates that we there. And third is purely work. When you get into work, you will get to know about this. Unfortunately, there is there's no other way. But it's important that we know and we remember this word, because a charter in America will probably be charter in the UK, and probably a charter in India. So we need to use, because all project managers are going to use this word. So vocabulary standardization is one key important aspect of project documentations, project framework, and most frameworks it still applies the same. So we need to know this. But as in, when you know and you go through the entire curriculum, you will probably remember most of it, at least the key ones, the most common ones you'll remember. Rest all is when you start getting into the work, you will definitely remember this. But at the same time, they made it very, not very complex. You will, most of them will be connected. Most of them will be something that you can relate to, you can connect to, and you'll remember by just with the help of that connect that we establish. You realize that you might not be for example, you're not in the structured project management, but you realize there's a guy who comes in and says, listen, can you get the charter signed off? Oh, okay, then you know what that charter is all about. What is this document about? You'll get to know this. And like what I said, we'll really talk about each and every process that you see this. The entire curriculum is based on that. Okay, so I will take you guys through, and I will also give you, as in when we progress further, you will also probably remember most of it, and we will talk about this a lot more in detail, Rajesh. Maybe that question you'll have more clarity once we go through many more classes together.
Okay.
Okay, anything from the ladies before we move into the first process and first knowledge areas? I want to ensure that some of them may be new to project management world. It is absolutely fine, but you will really reap the benefits in your coming years when you start going into the middle management and top management. You go back to your company and you see the top guys, most of them will have PMP certification. That's the value of it. So, it's great that you are probably getting this much earlier. You will reap the benefits later. But having said so, does anybody has any questions around this? Sachin, do you have any question? Because we will talk about all these processes in detail. But so far, we are almost done with the introduction for sure. And now we will start moving into knowledge areas. We'll start moving into the processes. We will talk about this in details. So I want to ensure that we are okay so far.
So yes, Rajesh, my side is okay.
Okay. So Kanya, we've not heard you today. Are you okay?
Yeah, Rajat, I'm following
You're
with
following,
that
right?
in the yes, they will use all this.
You use this, isn't
I,
it? Because you'll get to know. You always get to know all this
yes,
documentation. Very good.
yes,
Okay.
I'm
Now
following.
we will talk about the first process. Okay, and we will take an extension of what we are talking about. And one technique of remembering all this is you'll have to connect to some logic or topic. See, when you look at the first knowledge areas, which is integration knowledge area, okay, it is really different from all the other knowledge areas, isn't it? We have spoken about so many knowledge area: integration, scope, schedule, cost, resource, quality, communication, risk, procurement. We also have stakeholders. These are all knowledge areas. Unless and until you have an extreme understanding of all this, you will not get your project successful. And when you talk about all the other knowledge areas, it has a very specific document which comes in. For example, when you deal with scope, it comes with scope baseline. It will give you a scope baseline or scope document which will be there. When you talk about schedule, it will tell you how much time you will take to complete the project. It will talk you when you talk about cost, it will talk about how much money that will take to complete the project. Resources, you'll find the set of people. All the other knowledge areas, we have a specific outcome that is expected. But this one, integration knowledge area, is basically there because it's probably the job of a project manager so that he can take the expertise of all this. He can take the process group, deliver this, and all these processes together combine. Somebody has to combine this together. Who does this? This knowledge area. It does not have a specific outcome as such because this is a project in itself, the whole project in itself. So it talks to all the process groups, all the processes, and try to get the project itself. And that in a nutshell is the job of a project manager too, because the job of project manager is talking to some million people, doing a lot of things, communicating, estimating, planning. Everything is a part of this guy, a knowledge area called integration. Even when you look at this processes that you see, like a develop project charter, develop project management plan, direct and manage project work, manage project knowledge, control, integrated close project phase. You see, there's a word called project already there. There's a project word which is already there. All this, this itself means it's a project in itself. Now, how do we remember this? We're talking about the first project, first process, which is develop project charter. You can relate to something called Deming cycle. You can probably have an extension of Deming cycle, and and anybody wants to talk about Deming cycle? There's a four-step process that Deming had recommend. Is one of those quality guru. You remember when the Nagasaki atom bomb incident happened, Second World War. Japan was in complete turmoil. Okay, there's a quality philosopher who went from America, gone to Japan, and he did a lot of philosophy, a lot of quality theories and policies that he got into, and that changed the world. There was a guy called Deming who's really, really famous. He recommends something which is called a cycle called PDCA, isn't it? What is this PDCA? In general, let me find a small framework. Let me find some good shapes for you guys so that I can probably explain this. Okay, a little better. And okay, I can take one of the smart art. Okay, let's take some of the smart art. Okay. Mm. Yeah, I can probably take one of them. Okay. I'll take this as an example.
So, tool, hello,
Yes.
excuse me.
Yes.
Like the tool what you are using for creating these pictures and all,
Yeah.
is it like this one or can we also get the
Yeah. So, see, I'll tell you the most common tools. I do a lot of process documentation. When you do a lot of process documentation, this tool, this is called Microsoft Visio. Okay, and this helps you to draft a lot of process and documentation. Do you need this? Yeah, if you are into structured process management and service management, you will. Sometimes in regular day-to-day work also you need it. Okay, this is called Visio. Rest, of course, Excel is there. I will at some point of time I will take a small session on Microsoft project, okay, which is this software, and I will take a session on Microsoft project. You will understand. So most of your project plans will be under this tool called Microsoft project. Now if somebody wants to this is a licensed software. I do have a setup available for Microsoft projects. If somebody wants to take an exe setup file of Microsoft project, I can recommend that. But to begin with, what people can do is you can download the trial version. Go to Microsoft website, try searching for Microsoft project, Microsoft Visio, download that, and start working, because these are tools that project managers will use on a day in and day out basis. So this tool will be required. I will talk about this once we finish our scope, time, and cost. I will talk about this top tool, and I will also probably give you an example of how do we use this tool. This is an important tool that will come very very handy. For now I will take it, but yes, Rajesh, you should definitely go ahead and if you want to go ahead and download this software, please do that. This is one tool that project managers will use quite extensively. And of course, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. If you are into process management, this tool Visio is also there. You could use that. I can forward some of the setups and exe once your trial version gets expired.
thank you.
Uh,
But Raj, tools can change as per the organization also, right?
and no, this is standard project management software across the world, Sachin. So Microsoft Project, there are only two tools specifically for project planning. Okay, one is of course project, or you could have something called Primavera. Either ways, somebody wants to have an extreme understanding of Primavera project, I will only have a session on this. But if you really want to understand this tool in depth, and we do have a separate curriculum on this. But whatever I cover in this should be enough to manage your project plan. But if you're interested to know Primavera, these are the most important deal, irrespective of which organization, whether it's Wipro, Capgemini, a bank, the project manager is using only this tool for project planning, or he'll probably use an Excel file. Nothing else beyond this. It doesn't need to use this. These are the most common one. Visio is, again, most companies do have tie-ups with Microsoft. They have uh, a setup which is available. So they do have a common tool which is the Microsoft. So these are common tools. Answering your question, it will be used across the globe. Most companies will be using it. They are the market leaders, no other things. Okay, probably you can check this with some of the uh, Wipro project managers. They are probably using the same thing. Okay, across the globe is the same thing. So you'll use either of that, and some tools on process management. If you're a guy who drives a lot of processes and document a lot of things, this becomes a very easy way to document and all. If you're a guy who does a lot of architectural design, You can also go get into uh, this, get into more. It becomes a very important tool. It's a very extensive tool that can be used. So yeah, but I will ensure that you will have an understanding of this tool, so that at least on a project management perspective, I will definitely have a curriculum for this, which I will tell you. We take a sample project. I will make a sample project plan. I will exactly show how and what needs to be used in that tool. Okay, this will happen after we finish scope, time, and cost. Good, Sachin?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
If it is possible, you can cover two, three tools.
Well, see, today,
It's
our Word, Excel, PowerPoint can do miracles. Most things they can do everything. But if you
the
understand,
Word, PowerPoint, Excel, they are common.
yeah, they are most common and they can do a lot of things. It's huge, isn't it? But yes, I will definitely try to cover at least
Okay,
project. If you guys are interested to know a little bit of Visio, I can show a little bit Visio if you guys are interested.
but
If you can understand
at
this
least
five
you have to
tools,
take two.
done. Yeah, what is it, Sachin?
Okay. If it is possible, you have to take at least one overview for two, three tools because at the time of interview, they are asking about the. Are you aware about the product management tools?
Oh yeah, yeah. They will definitely ask you. Definitely. They will definitely ask you. I will try to at least find yeah, two, three tools. That's a good understanding that you can have. Okay, and yeah, they will definitely ask you in the interview. Do you have, or probably will be a requirement, which is will be there as a part of the job requirement that you need to have a hands-on experience on a tool called Microsoft Project or Primavera, or there will be many other few other tools that I will. Yeah, I can take an overview on some of
Okay,
them.
thank you.
Right. So we were saying that how do we remember those life cycle and there is Rajesh says, oh my God, there is so much of things to kind of remember word wise, vocabulary wise. How do I remember this? We are trying to establish and connect and see how we can do. We are talking about the first one, project integration management. It itself means the project itself. There is no specific deliverable as such, but the project manager is talking to and doing a lot of things and integrating a lot of things to get this. How do we remember those six, seven processes that you see there? Because there are seven processes that I see there. How do I remember this? I am taking a reference of Deming Cycle. Then everybody kind of remember Deming Cycle. When I really talk about this, you will get to know now. You always talk about the cycle called plan. You remember that cycle is also called PDCA, isn't it? So do, check, act. It's one of the most common tool that gets used so much, right? In general, I'll probably take this also a word, plan, do, check, and act. Now I will expand this cycle a little more. Okay, I want to expand the cycle a little more. I want to go ahead that even before planning is done, you want to ensure there is some work which happens before planning, isn't it? And I'll probably give the word as pre-planning. I'm extending this word, okay? And before the plan is happened, we have a pre-plan. You can plan the work, you can do some work. When you check your work and when you check your project deliverables, if something is right, great. But if something is not right, then what do you do? If something is not right, then what we will do? Hmm?
Is it
Yes?
revisit the plan?
Yeah, if something is not right, which means I expected to get a software deployment, software is not correct, okay, or maybe there are bugs there. What we will do? We will
We will analyze what was the issue.
Correct. And then all this will lead to changes. Change
Yes.
something. Okay. So if I add two more dimension to this, and when you say act, which means it's done. When I add two more dimension to Deming cycle, we have a plan, do, check, and act. And if I can add two more dimension, which is the dimension of probably here, I can do a pre-planning. And when I check and I realize something is not right, then I probably can also add change. The whole cycle is generally a part of integration knowledge area. When is a pre-planning phase, even before the project started, the first step in the project is called a develop project charter. Okay. When you talk about planning, we are saying develop project management plan. When you say do, we are saying direct and manage project work. And when you say check, you're saying monitor and controlling project work. When you say change, you're saying perform integrated change control. And on act, we say close project and phase. In all this, we also want to capture knowledge, and knowledge right now is not a part of planning process. It's a part of execution projects. So in execution, you also have manage project knowledge. Okay, and that's how processes are based. I will take this as a reference and I will copy this. So during initiation, you have developed project charter. During planning, you have developed project management plan. During execution, you have a direct and managed project, direct and manage project work, also manage project knowledge. During monitoring, you can definitely go ahead and monitor and see what is going on, or you can do perform integrated change control. And in closing, you can do close project and phase. Now, do you really need to worry about too many things here? It's for now, just don't worry. I'm just trying to give you a little initial heads up of how this book is based. The whole book, the whole method of project management, the whole life cycle of project management really talks about this process group, this knowledge areas. You will need the help of all these processes. Today, without a charter, you cannot get the project started, isn't it? I'm trying to give you a little heads up on all this. Do you need to be really bothered and confused why so much of terminologies for now? Don't really worry. Okay, because we're going to talk about that. But you need to understand how this methodology, how this framework, okay, how this book is written, how what all needs to be done, what will come first, what will get second. Just don't get confused of too many things there. For now, we are just getting started. We finished the foundation. We understood the life cycle. We know what is a sponsor. We know what is a stakeholder. We know what is this phases. We know what a project manager does. Now I'm trying to get into hardcore project management. But before we get into hardcore project management, we've understood what process group is, what is knowledge area is, what are these processes is, how do we refer and understand this. We took an example of Deming Cycle and we added two more shades there, and you realize all this. And you should also know where it falls on. Like develop project charter is a part of initiation project group, and you need to if you go back to my first day of class, I said there are 13% of the marks in initiation, there are 20%, 24% of the mark in planning, there is this 31% of the planning scores is in execution, then there are 26% of the scores in monitoring and controlling, and roughly 7% of the marks in closing. So, and how is this marks going to be coming to you? In generally, the questions will be based on all these processes that you see. Do you need to really be complex or worried about? Just don't worry, because we're going to talk about everything. But you need to understand that I need to understand this, I need to understand this, I need to understand what will fit into initiation project group, because initiation project groups has only two processes. One is develop project charter, and right at the end you will have identify stakeholders. Okay, once you have an understanding of these two processes very well, you get to understand what you get 13% of marks, and I'll talk about this more when we really talk about this. But this is where the whole book is understanding. Today when I look back to this book, and like what I said, if you go to from 1 to 106, you will exactly know how this book is going to be based. Because if I talk about the next project, next topic after that 106 pages that we looked at yesterday, and we will get into project integration knowledge area, it will really explain all these processes one by one. And that's how book is. In general, the expectation is if you understand this, and if you understand 50 processes, you should be able to deliver project management. Is it complex? No, not really. And we will go through that one by one. We will talk about this one. But I wanted to give you a heads up of how this framework is written, and we understand the foundation. We will talk about each and everything, and then we'll take it forward from there. Okay? Questions so far? Okay.
Raj, now it's looking difficult.
Not at all. Not at all. Okay, can I give you an example of the first process? And maybe you will say, no, I think it's okay. Okay. If I don't even really think about what we have written right now. Okay. Okay, if you really don't, that we've gone to foundation. Okay. What has happened so far? Okay. And I probably ask, Sukanya, so far, okay, forget about the foundation. What have we done so far? Okay, assuming that you take an example of a project. Sukanya, can you give an example of a project?
The example of project, I took one R&D project where
Yeah, what is it?
they
What was the R&D about?
R&D about this electrical switchgear
Electric switch
inside many parts.
implementation. Okay, okay.
Yes,
I'm going to take that
that,
as a project.
yes.
Okay, okay. I'm going to take a project which says, okay, electric. Okay.
Hey,
So when you say,
Raj,
yes,
Raj, continue. It is
Sachin.
possible to take a real-time example which is related to our life because it will be easy to understand that.
Okay. Let's do, I'm going to
It's
construct a
possible,
house. Okay. I'm going to construct
and
a house. Okay.
and
Is it good?
everyone is agree on that.
Okay. We're going to construct a house. Okay. Are we good so far? Is that a common example?
Yeah, it's,
Okay. Very good. Okay. So when you want to construct a house, and according to what we have studied so far, and assuming that if Sachin is the project manager, he wants to get this project started, it needs to be real interest of this Today, you want to ensure that when you build a house, it's beneficial for you, isn't it? And you've taken this for many reasons. So there are two things when you actually build a house. There are two things that you need to really get together for you to go ahead and get started. One is your document, which we say business case, isn't it? And when you say business case, we say, if I have to just simplify this word simply, that when Sachin wants to build a house and he's the project manager, he wants to ensure that it's profitable, it is according to his budget. I'm taking this because today I'm staying on rent, tomorrow by buying this house I'm going to make money out of it, and eventually it's also about society and reputation, and there are other benefits which will be there. So I think it makes a lot of sense that I will go ahead and do that. So which means he starts a business case to go ahead and do this. Okay, and he will also want to ensure that whatever benefits that he has really taken to go ahead and take this forward, he's documented this into two document, which is called benefit realization document. Okay. This to document, he said, okay, fine, I think it is making sense. I do have a real reason. I think it's quite profitable. I'm saving on rent, and society status is going to be helping out. So great. Maybe it will help me for a long time. Maybe my kids also can stay there. And I have documented all this case. And I want to build this house. Okay. So once this is done, now we need a guy who will be the real owner of the project. Maybe Sachin father is the real guy who will probably say, okay, I think we need to go ensure that, okay, I'm going to put Sachin's father, who's going to be saying that, okay, listen, I think Sachin father says, listen, I'll give you money. I think if you want some reference of contractors and all those, I'll probably do. And if you have any problem in future, just let me know. Okay. In general, we're talking about the guy called sponsor in project management world. I'm trying to connect a practical example with this project management methodology. So once the Sachin father says, okay, fine, I think somebody needs to go ahead and help me construct this house. I think it looks all benefit and all those things. I need a guy who can do this project for me. Okay, he identifies a guy, and in this case is Sachin. He identifies. Similarly, within the organization, if somebody sponsor finds a guy who can deliver this house for him, that guy will be the project manager. Okay. Now, what Sachin father says, okay, listen, my friend, I think Sachin, you need to go ahead and ensure that I think it looks all okay. We can go ahead and start this project. Before we go ahead and take this forward, can you start giving me a high level plan, and then only we'll go ahead with the project. Later you can give me a detailed plan, no problem, but for now you need to give me a very high level detailed plan. What is that plan? Okay. And Sachin says, okay, I think I'll give you the high level plan. And that high level plan in project management world is called a charter, or let me be very specific, project charter. According to Sachin, okay, let's say assume that he's not from the project management world. For him, it's a very high level plan. He takes this document of high level plan, and what is this project charter will have? Project charter, according to Sachin, will have a lot of things, but he wants to know what will be as a part of the project charter. What is his father wants to see as a part of the plan, and in general, basically, his father says, can you prepare me a high level plan? And Sachin goes ahead and documents. He says, okay, I think I can probably document the objective. Why are we doing this? Because I think maybe all those benefits that will come with the project, it will be there. He also gives a very high level understanding of how much money, how much time it will take to complete that house. He also gives a high understanding of risk. Okay, he says, listen, father, I think we need to go to government agencies, land clearance is there, otherwise we'll have a little trouble there. Or maybe if you don't find good contractor, I think the house will not be constructed well. Okay, he gives a list of vendors. Basically, he is trying to give a list of stakeholders out there. Okay, and he also gives an assumption saying that, okay, what do we need to have as a part of it. He gives an understanding of what a scope is. Maybe he can have only 3 floors, good tiles. Maybe he doesn't want to have AC, he just wants to have a fan, isn't it? He gives a little understanding of, what all can be like assumptions. Okay, and constraints. When you say assumption and constraints, he's assuming that there will be some good vendors he will get. He's assuming that most times approval will come in three weeks of time. Okay, and if you don't come, I think we could be in little trouble, but I'm assuming that. Okay, and Sachin goes ahead and document this. Now, considering all probably same work, this is exactly what project management is all about. You need to have a business case, you need to have a benefit realization. There is somebody who needs to be the sponsor. That guy needs to find. The first thing that you really do is make a high level plan, which is your project charter, and that is exactly how the book is getting written. Okay, that is how we're talking about the first process, which is our project charter. Okay, and before we move any forward, and that is what this book also says, that there are a few things that you need to do before the project, which is a business case document, benefit realization. After you have everything understanding, you start with the charter. What is a charter? It is a very high level project plan. Who makes this charter? In general, project manager is not even there before the charter gets started. It is only the sponsor or somebody who recommends that their house is a good thing, needs to be there. He gets this, and once sponsor signs on this project charter, then becomes a real lifetime project. Now, before we move any forward, I want to give a little live template of an example of a project charter. Do we have another 5 minutes? I can walk you through a project charter, and then we can talk about this a little more. I know we are supposed to end by now, but if you give me 5 minutes, I can show a live example of what a project charter is. Are we good, everybody?
Raj, you can
Yeah.
proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much. So let me go ahead and show you an example of what a project charter is. And so that it will also remain in your mind, it will be connected to you. You will understand what a project charter looks like. And I'll give you a real work example. Now, then we've given a real live example. I'll probably give you a real work example of what a project charter looks like, so that you have a fair understanding of work also. Okay. I will give you an example of what this project was all about. I was driving this project. I will let you know what it means. Uh, in general, when you talk about it's one of those project that I was implementing. When you look at your ATM, when you go to a ATM, you put your card, you get your money back. Uh, you have the physical device, which is the ATM terminal device in itself. But that whole transaction is managed by a software. That whole terminal is managed by a software called Aptra. Okay, and Aptra is a specific software which is generally related to NCR machines. Most times when you go to an ATM, you realize that the machines are generally NCR machines, and it's driven by the a software which is called Aptra. And we realized that there was a vulnerability which was there, so we had to implement that software across all ATMs. Okay, that is a classic example of a project. This is an example of a project charter. Even before the project gets started, somebody from either the PMO team or the functional head or the ISO head or security head needs to get this 2-page document, a high level plan, before the project gets started. So what this guy does, he says, okay, fine, let me go ahead and drop this very high level plan. I think it is something which will come as a part of the e-banking portfolio, because I think e-banking is about ATMs, EDMs, mobile banking, internet banking. Those are things which are really important there. There is a very high level budget which is available from this guy. I think it was requested by a guy who says, I think it's an important thing that we need to do, because our machines, that software is getting outdated. It's on risk. So we need to change that software. Can we get this project started? And yeah, we understand that there can be very high level people who can be part of this, which are the project steering committee members. And I can also have some people from IT and from developers and some testers, from infrastructure, from network team, from the database team who can be part of my job, team, and they can help me out with the project. And we said, okay, initially it was taken so that we can replace that software or upgrade that software. And there are some things that we will do. We will upgrade the software, and it will be really good, because then it will be useful for so that new cards and all those things can be used. These are different phases of the project. When we do the project beginning, I think I will also produce a charter document. When I do a project planning, I'll give you a project plan document. There are test cases that we will run. There are some change management also I will follow. I will have some level of risk. I'm assuming that the scope will not change, the requirement is not changed. This is an example of a charter, and that is exactly what happens as a practically as a part of the project. Because once you have your business case document, once you have your uh, project gets signed off, the first thing that comes into existence is the project charter. The charter can be prepared by PMO, functional head, anybody, but it needs to be signed by sponsor. And that is where the first process. Now, was it so difficult to correlate? Not very difficult to correlate, you see. It's just, simple science. So we will try to see how we can connect. But today we finished the complete foundation. It sounded easy to you. This, don't worry about this. We just covered one process in a simplified way. That is exactly what the book also will tell you, in a simplified way. And you need to understand, oh, okay, there's a business case which is done, there's a benefit realization which is done. I think let's get started, the project started. How do we get the project started? I think either the sponsor or the PMO head or the functional head, whoever is requesting, can prepare a very high level plan, and I can get started. And that needs to be signed by the sponsor. You fire once you are signed by this project manager. That's where project manager comes into existence. You get the project started. That's the way it is. Good so far, or still complex? Yes, it was simple, isn't it? Not very complex. So yeah, we will talk about this now in the next class, which is on Saturday we will have a 4-hour session on that. Is on 25th, 6:30 to probably 10:30. We'll try to finish it up. If anybody has any concern with timings, please let me know. I may try to work in the best interest of all. We don't have a class on a Sunday. The next one will probably be on 1st and 2nd together. But if you are all okay with 6:30, 10:30, let me know. Anyone? Okay. I am not hearing a lot of answer, which means I'm thinking, assuming that everybody. Oh, let's start. Komal, are you okay with that? Hey, Komal, do you have office on Saturday, next Saturday?
No, I have an week off on next Saturday.
Okay, very
So
good.
it's okay. Yeah.
Rasika, are you okay, Rasika? Sachin, are you okay?
Yes, Raj, I am okay. No problem
Yeah,
for myself.
I'm hoping that Rajesh and Savita, we are giving them enough reasons to wake up early in the morning in Canada. I know it's cold there, but yes, I I hope you guys are okay. Uh,
Yeah, good.
okay. Snehal, both the Snehals, are you okay?
I'm okay with this, but can we keep this session for 3 hours rather than 4 hours?
You want to keep it to 3 hours? Okay, we will keep it to 3 hours. Okay, so 6:30 to 9:30.
Yes,
Okay, okay, 6:30 to
yes, Raj.
9:30.
Sometimes it will go bounce.
Yeah. Don't worry about that. And I will always go ahead and circulate this book. Please go through the book is also there. Okay, just go through those pages that we have gone through. And if you have any question, I don't mind re-explaining it. There is no problem. Okay. And like what I said, at the end of the curriculum, you realize it's not very difficult. You'll be able to connect all the dots, and it's simple science. It can unless until the framework is simple, nobody will adapt it. So we want to ensure that you know uh, the the framework is simple, and that is how it's a classic book is. So I will also attach till today whatever we have done so far. I'm going to attach that reference point also, and I'm going to attach this book that we have done so far. I think you should be able to read that book. In case you don't get this book, please forward to each other. Let me know. But we've just finished the foundation, which is great, and we've also touched base on the process group and the knowledge areas, and we've practically picked one process and covered it. Okay. We are definitely touching base on questions, so you'll be getting ready for the exams also. We will also take the tool training on Microsoft Project and maybe some other project tool reference so that you understand that. In nutshell, not only that you'll be able to clear your exam, understand the concepts, but also when you get into a real life situation, you'll be able to understand that. More importantly, when you have people around you using this vocabulary, you are knowing what exactly they're using and what does it mean by that. So we will try to cover them up all together.
And
Right?
Rajkumar,
Yes.
can you have a small session on the interview questions for project management?
Yeah. So who all are interested in this? We'll keep a last 30-minute session once we finish this book. Okay, 30-minute session on only interviews. And maybe if somebody has an interview lined up soon, I could probably have a separate session with only that person, and we can just talk about that interview only. Okay, and maybe if Rajesh, you have something coming up soon, you do let me know. Either you or Savita has something coming up soon. We can just have an interview round even before that. Okay, we'll talk about that somewhere.
We need some help in the resume part.
Yeah,
If you have any sample resumes, can you share this?
I can do that. Yeah, let's talk about that. And for the interest of the class also, all of us will go through that half-an-hour session. But I think maybe you
Okay.
might have something coming in very soon, and you need to be a little ready before that happens. Maybe for you and Savita, I know that you have some requirements there, so we can have a quick pre-session also. We'll talk about that. Just
Okay.
fix it with Prajwal somewhere during this week. Need not be a weekend, and we can talk about
Okay.
it.
All right, Rajkumar.
Yeah, because I know that you'll have to start, you will get into those interview situations soon. So we will get them prepared.
Yeah.
Like, thank you very much, all, and let's talk next
Hello,
week.
Rajkumar.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yes.
Rajkumar.
Yeah, who has a
Hello.
question? Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, by when we can get the videos, it's yesterday's and today's lecture, so that we can,
You need
revise it before next lecture.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, give me a little time. I need to polish it a little bit, Komal. So I'm still sending that reference of Excel file. Okay, so that you have some heads up to do. The book is also there. So good is you don't have to read page by page. You have a topic. Pick up the topic and see do you understand this. Go have a reference on the Excel file. That's good enough. Okay, and I'll try to see how best I can finish that. But I will ensure that the
Okay.
whole book is covered. You will have enough reference to talk. Hmm?
Oh, okay, no issues.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll meet next week. And feel comfortable to ask questions because only when you ask questions, I'll get to know whether you understand this. Am I probably going in the right direction? Is important because eventually it's about you taking the real benefits of this class. And everybody has their own real interest of being in this class. So ensure that you just ask questions. There's nothing called wrong and right. Feel free to ask a question. Is fine. Even if I have to remove a million times, I will do that. I'll find my own ways of doing it. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend ahead. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye. Bye.